Hello and welcome to TUI Books. I'm Surbi Rawat, a lifestyle journalist, and today we have with us Ankur Warikoo, who is an entrepreneur, teacher, content creator, mentor, and an author. Ankur founded Nearby.com and was its CEO from its inception in 2015 until 2019. Prior to that, Ankur was the founding CEO of Groupon's India business. Today, he spends his time creating content, teaching online, and mentoring first-time founders. More recently, Ankur Warikoo penned his debut book titled Do Epic Shit, which is now available as an audiobook on Audible. So, welcome, Ankur.
Thank you so much, Surbi, for having me and for the very generous introduction.
I'll just dive into the questions directly. So, firstly, tell us a bit more about the book. Like, what is it about, and why did you choose this title?
Those are a lot of questions in one. I'll start with what the book is about because that I think is most personal to me. I've loved reading books all my life, Surbi, and I've gained so much that it saddens me that the world today is not reading as much as it used to. And perhaps you and I have come from a time where books were our best friends and we used to love and be excited about reading them. But dheere dheere karke, the world's drifting away. And of course, different shapes and form have come up. So I wanted to write a book which appeals to people who have rarely read or have never read in their life. And that meant three things. One, it needs to be a very light read. So if you actually look at the physical form of the book and now also the audio version on Audible, it's something that you can consume within 2 to 3 hours if you spend your time dedicated. So it's not a very deep book. Second, you can actually start the book anywhere and not have to finish it. So the book is not written in chapters. There's no story. It's like a page by page. And I'd like to believe, I may be wrong here, but this may be the first audiobook as well, where you could just literally go to any section of the entire book, read it for 5 minutes or hear it for 5 minutes in this case, and still have something to take away. And the third one is there should be zero guilt that people feel if they're not able to finish the book, which is a offshoot of the second point itself. That was the genesis of the book. And I wanted to write one for the current generation, the Gen Zs, 18 to 24-year-olds. And I'm so glad that it struck a chord. Do Epic Shit, the name though, is something which has been my life motto for almost 10 years now. It's something that I love. It's broken into do, which is action greater than thought. Epic, which means doing something which is bigger than yourself and not limited to who you are. And shit is just colloquial for having fun while you're doing it. So do epic shit is do things that are greater than you and have fun while you're doing it. So when Chiki and I were discussing what should be the name of the book, this was just such an obvious choice to make. And I'm glad that people resonated with it.
All right. In the book, you shared about the mistakes that you have made in your life and the things that you've learned from them. And it gives a very interesting viewpoint to the readers and listeners. A tip that you share in the book is about the three most important relationships that one should have in their life, which is their relationship with time, their relationship with money, and the relationship with themselves. So, would you like to tell us a bit more about it, Ankur?
So relationships define everything that we do in life. So when I was thinking about which are the most meaningful relationships we have, we tend to give them names, and those will be relationships with our parents or perhaps with our partners, perhaps with our children, maybe our friends, our colleagues, whatsoever. But I think that relationship transcends all of that, and it's largely an emotion that you feel. And when I thought deeply about it, this is what I came up with. I believe that your relationship with money, time, and your own self defines literally everything else, because your relationship with money will define what you chase, what you go after. And if you're hungry for money, then you will chase those things. And that will define how you also make your relationships with people. The kind of people you choose, the kind of relationships you would have with them, the kind of impact you want to create through that relationship in your own life and possibly theirs. Your relationship with time will define how you go about achieving that. Because if you are a master controller of your time, you will always feel in control and will get things done. If you're always running short of time and also perhaps have a somewhat unhealthy relationship with money, then it could just be chaotic and you will struggle to form any meaningful relationship even outside of this. And finally, your relationship with your own self, which will tell you what is it that you are doing this for? Like what genuinely gives you true meaning purpose, joy at the end of everything. Because there's so many people who are chasing things that they think they want in life, only to realize that's not what they wanted when they get it. And that's only because they haven't sat down with themselves to understand who they truly are.
In the book, you also talk about maintaining three different types of journals at any given point. So if you would like to elaborate a bit about it.
I'm a fan of journals, and I believe that there are journals that one should carry everywhere, whether it's a physical journal in the form of a notebook or even a voice journal, because voice is just so important to today's generation as well. So I personally keep moving between what are the journals that I carry, how and why. But I do carry one journal which is just for my ideas. It's something that strikes me and I want to record it. When I do that, I'm telling my brain that it's important. And I also have a way of getting back to it if I need it in the future. I have a journal which is just the things that I have to do. These are my to-do lists. These are things that I would just want to remember, things that I have to attend to. It could be in a physical form, it could be in a virtual form, as technology, whatever the case may be. And there'll also be this journal which I have begun to use right now, which is what I call the distraction journal. And the distraction journal is a very powerful concept where if I'm working on something and I get distracted, instead of going in that flow or forcing myself not to think about it, I will actually just write it down in the distraction journal. So I'll say I was distracted by this thought. And the minute I do that, I'm telling my brain again that this is something that I can come back to and I don't need to attend to it right now. So I can quickly come back to what I was doing. And if there is something which is meaningful in that distraction, which is why it hit my brain at that time, I will attend to it in the future. More often than not, I also realize it's a passing thought. So you're just daydreaming and you're thinking about what you have to do, but it was never that important. And it's a great way for you to vomit that thought out on a piece of paper or any other form, and then get back to what you are doing.
That's quite interesting because, a lot of time it's said that writing does help you understand yourself better. Maybe the distraction journal is letting you, it's kind of helping you to understand yourself better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It'll be fascinating. And what you say, Surabhi, could be something I've never tried, but it could be really awesome is after say a month or 2 months, go through your distraction journal and actually recognize there is a pattern around your distraction as well. Like you tend to get distracted around this time or on these concepts or when you're doing this kind of thing. And that can actually help you know yourself really well. So that's a good thought. I'll take that up.
You have also mentioned about books a lot of times in your debut book as well, how they have helped you become the person that you are today. So what are your top 5 book recommendations for someone that you think everyone should read?
Oh, that's such a hard question, and I know that this question gets asked because it's like choosing your top 5 movies or your top 5 songs. It's really, really hard. I can tell you the top 5 gifted books because I love gifting books, and I think that it's such a joy to do so. So my number one on the list is this book called Rework. It's by Jason Fried and DHH, who are founders of this wonderful company. I read this book really long time back in 2009, and it meaningfully changed my definition of work. So I've stood by it. The second one, now in no order of priority because I don't keep a track anymore, is Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a wonderful book, particularly for young minds, because if you get used to understanding how habits can help you in your life, it can change your life forever in a meaningful fashion. Psychology of Money, to understand money. More importantly, understand the emotion and the sentiment behind money as against how to make money, where to invest, and so on, which could be very tactical. So that'll be number 3. I very frequently find myself gifting my own book, not because I am in love with my book and this is like a pompous reflection, but I do believe it's a great book for somebody who's not used to reading. And I do meet a lot of people who are like, hey, what could be a great book to start your reading habit? And I was like, why don't you start with this book? Maybe it will be easy on you and you will enjoy the book as against anything else. And one book that I particularly gift to founders a lot or entrepreneurs a lot is The Hard Thing About Hard Things, which in my opinion is one of the best and the most honest books about entrepreneurship.
All right. Considering the fast-paced life that we all are living in, we are all comparing ourselves constantly to others, that, the other person has achieved so much, I'm lagging behind or whatever. So most of the times, most of us, we are running behind our goals and we are thinking of how to achieve them. And what I found interesting in your book was that you said instead of having a goal, build habits instead. And I found it quite interesting, a very interesting thought. So if you would like to elaborate that to our viewers today.
Sure. So here is my discomfort with goals and targets. More often than not, Surbhi, our desires are converted into goals and targets. We desire to have a car, and then we suddenly say, oh, my goal is to have a car by 25. We unnecessarily put a timeline or a deadline on it. We desire to have a house or go on a fancy vacation, and we'll set that as a goal with a deadline to it. If we hit it, we feel great about ourselves. If we don't hit it, we feel super sorry for ourselves. But in my opinion, both these emotions are not warranted. One, because if you do hit a goal, nothing's to say that you could have actually hit a bigger goal, but you just settled at that because that was your goal. If you don't hit the goal, nothing's to suggest that you could have never hit that goal in the first place itself, because you weren't with the right capability, maybe not the right market conditions, anything not working your way. So why put yourself through that agony and literally have a toss of coin? Instead, marry yourself into this concept of habits. Devote yourself to how you want to live life. Whether it's the worldview, how you interact with people, how you interact with yourself, as I said, your relationship with money, with time, so on, because that then compounds to take you far farther away than anything that you could have said for yourself. And particularly for young people, this is very important because we will have a life very different from what we set out to do. I saw that, Surbhi, that you did chemistry in your undergrad.
Oh,
I did
yes.
physics in my undergrad. We're not doing anything remotely close to chemistry and physics now in our lives. But the beauty of life is that we took a path that took us to a direction that we may not have chosen for ourselves when we were young. And yet we are happy. We're still very young. So who's to say that Surbhi tomorrow may be doing completely a different thing than what she's doing right now? And that's not to suggest that she wasn't good with what she was doing. It's just a changed person, a changed personality. How do you make that happen is never by a goal or a target. It is by the way that you continue living life and the sentiment around that.
True. Coming back to the book, since this is your first book as this is the debut book, and you have also narrated the audio book. So, what were your learnings from this entire experience of writing a book and also creating an audiobook?
It was fascinating, Surbhi. And I have to be the first one to admit I discounted all of this experience to a large degree. And I'm not proud of that feeling and that judgment. But I felt, क्या हो जाएगा book लिखने से? क्या उखड़ जाएगा? किसी की जिंदगी में कुछ बदलने तो वाला नहीं है. And I'm not the most important person in this world and will never be. So it doesn't make a difference. But I think this entire journey taught me so much about my own self. First, writing the book itself, because I wanted to structure it in the way that I described, no start, no finish, can read it very quickly. I had to devote a lot of energy in picking up the things that I wanted to, yet not have a flow in it, which can become very disconcerting, particularly for people who are used to reading books a lot. Because I didn't want to eliminate them. And I didn't want to say, oh, this book is not for you because you read a lot of books. I wanted to be inclusive, but that meant putting in a lot more effort. And I thought, you know what? This is great. The audiobook will now be even easier. Oh my God, it was a whole new experience. And it was because you are now bringing in verbal cues to an emotion that you were trying to write. And words will never truly express the emotion that your voice can, like the way that I'm doing right now. So when I sat down in the Audible studio, began to record it, and I remember distinctly telling the team, ये तो एक दिन के अंदर हो जाएगा, like 2 घंटे की book है, मैं 4 घंटे के अंदर बोल दूंगा. But it didn't. It took 2 full days, and it was such a different journey where they were constantly giving me feedback on, are you sure this is the right emotion you want to express? Did you do it right? And I also realized it when they played it back to me. It was just so professionally done. I could only hear my own voice, so I could hear my own emotions come through. I was very tired by the end of 2 to 3 hours. And they're like, do you want to hear the difference between the two voices when you started and now? And I heard it and it sounded like I've lived like 80 years and I'm just ready to die. So it was a very, very different experience, but I'm so glad that I did it. All credit to, of course, Audible for making it happen in the professional manner that it did. I would absolutely endorse every author to also record their own audio version, because they will relive their book in a meaningful fashion again.
So, as a debut writer, what do you think are the top 3 things that you should have known before writing a book? Something that would help other aspiring authors out there.
I wouldn't even go to 3, but I'll give you 1. But since you asked for 3, I will make it 3 for sure. But the number 1 thing will be, you have to first decide who are you writing for. And a lot of wonderful authors say, I'm writing for myself. But I feel that that's a little impractical, because if you're writing for yourself, you don't need to publish a book. You could very well just keep writing for yourself, and you don't have to ever make it public. If you are making it public, you are certainly writing for someone else, and you need to go through who are you writing for, because you then are in some way their servant. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I actually mean it in a way that you have to attend to what is it that they would want from you in the fashion that they would want. So that's number 1. Decide who are you writing for, and that may mean saying no to some other people. Number 2, when you have decided who you're writing for, ask yourself, how is it that they best consume content? It may not be in the form that you are used to writing, or is your strength, or perhaps is your style. And that may mean maybe this book will not work, or it may mean you have to change the way that you have written books and reinvent yourself and your style, or maybe come up with a completely new format. Why shouldn't there be a book that only has an audio version, never has a printed version? There could very well be that case, and I wouldn't dismiss that, because the generation now is a lot more conducive to listening as against just reading. And then number 3, and this is something that I was blessed with, but a lot of authors only realize much later, the onus of making the book work is on you. It's not on somebody else. It's definitely not your publisher. It's not your production team. It's not your printing press. It's nobody else. It is you. And you have to be the best and the most fearful evangelist of your own work, because if you wouldn't put your weight behind, there's nobody else who would do that to nearly the same extent as you would. And I wish authors knew that before they started, because most of them tend to take this as an emotional journey, and it is, but then they also feel disappointed with the results, and they feel that their efforts were wasted, which it shouldn't be the case if they genuinely thought through all of this even before they started writing.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Ankur. It was lovely talking to you.
Likewise, Surbhi. Thank you so much, and all the best with everything.
Thank you.